Hello, my friends. Are you trying to learn the PMP dogma, the 49 processes you've heard so much about for your exam? If you are, don't fear. I'm not going to bore you with big old charts and graphs and tables. We're just going to talk about a story. And I call it the Family Reunion Project. Some of you might have listened to it on my podcast. But once upon a time in the chaotic world of family dynamics, a monumental event was brewing. It all started with a rather dramatic blow up between my sister and my mom and Uncle Humbert during Thanksgiving dinner. Mom had a grand idea of organizing a family reunion. She envisioned a beautiful gathering where everyone would come together and create new memories. We need this, she said. She declared, her eyes sparkling with excitement. My sister, always the planner, immediately jumped on board with an overly enthusiastic suggestion. Let's have a medieval times theme, she said. Everyone can dress up as knights and princesses. Well, Uncle Humber wasn't having it. He liked simplicity. He liked anything not medieval, and he wasn't amused. Are you out of your mind? We're not reenacting another Game of Thrones. We just need some good old food and a bit of sunshine on each other. Well, what started off as a simple discussion turned into a full-blown family debate. Long story short, everyone agreed finally that we're going to have this family reunion. So guess what happened? We began the chartering and the planning in earnest. This takes you into integration management. So imagine you are the project manager, right? You get the family on board with the project charter promising the best reunion ever. And then you begin to create a plan that includes everything, scope and schedule, even Aunt Mary's insistence on her famous potato salad and Uncle John's barbecue expertise, everything planned. Then direct and manage project work is a coordination of the chaos, the food, the games, the venue, keep cousin Tim away from the grill. And then the managing of project knowledge, sharing past reunion stories, especially the one where cousin Bob got stuck in a tree to avoid past pitfalls. Then we talk about monitoring and controlling project work to ensure that the games start on time and the food remains unburnt. Monitor Uncle Joe's tendency to overcook. That guy, my goodness. And then we talk about performing integrated change control because we have an Aunt Sally, and her last minute demands for a singing machine had to be turned down with grace and quick thinking. Then we get into closing the project or phase, wrapping up the reunion and ensuring everyone leaves with a smile. That's integration, okay? Now, to make sure it sticks, I'm going to show you a graphic or two so that you can go through the experience, okay? So we talked about developing a charter, developing a plan, directing and managing the project work, managing project knowledge, monitoring and controlling the project work, performing integrated change control, and closing the project or the phases in the project, okay? So that's integration pretty much done. We get these outputs, the project charter, the project plan, deliverables, lessons learned, work performance reports, change log, and final report, to mention a few, okay? So that's pretty much how it works in integration. Still continuing with our fun story, let's talk about scope management. Now, for scope management, you got to understand the first thing that happened. It was the planning of the scope. So what we did was we defined how we're going to manage the scope, how we were going to plan everything out scope-wise and effectively manage it. When that was done, we went into collecting requirements, gathering everyone's must-haves like cousin Jane's gluten-free desserts and nephew Jake's soccer game. Then we defined the scope, clearly outlining what will and will not happen, like no politics at dinner and yes to the three-legged race. Then we move into creating the WBS, breaking down the reunion into manageable chunks from setting up the tents to making sure the pets are secured, validating scope, having grandma review the plan and giving her thumbs up and ensuring it meets her high standards. And lastly, control scope, keeping cousin Bob from adding last-minute fireworks displays to the agenda. And that's scope. Again, to make sure it sticks, we're going to go through it mentally. Let's jump in. Scope management. Number one, you plan how to manage the scope, plan scope management. Number two, collect the requirements. Number three, define the scope. Number four, create a work breakdown structure. Number five, validate the scope. Number 6, control scope. And the major outputs, you have your plans in the beginning, your requirements next, your project scope statement, your WBS dictionary, and your project scope statement, which makes up the scope baseline. And then you could get accepted deliverables, validate scope, and work performance information from control scope. And that's scope in a nutshell. Let's move on to schedule. So, this has got to be a colorful story. So when it comes to schedule management, we got to make it a little bit dramatic. So planned schedule management is the first thing that happens, creating a detailed schedule, ensuring activities like family photo time don't clash with the pie eating contest. Define activities is listing out everything, including setting up the slip and slide and starting the grill, right? Sequencing activities is ensuring logical flow, setting up the tent before starting the barbecue, so on and so forth. Estimate activity durations is guessing how long each task will take, factoring in Uncle Joe's leisurely grilling pace and other considerations. Number 5, develop schedule. It's putting together a timeline that ensures the egg toss happens before dark. And number 6, control schedule is keeping everyone on track, even when Aunt Sue wants to extend her heartfelt toast. And just have a band on hand to start the music when she goes off on a tangent. All right, so let's talk about schedule management. The very first thing that I mentioned is you got to plan how to manage the schedule. That's plan schedule management. Then you got to define the activities that will be done. Sequence activities is putting them in logical order of occurrence and making connections between them. Number 4 is estimating the activity duration. Number 5 is developing the schedule, putting it all together. And number 6 is controlling the schedule. Along the way, we're going to get a schedule management plan, a list of activities, a network diagram that shows how things will happen, duration estimates and basis of estimates for the durations. And boom, you got your schedule baseline, which is the originally approved schedule. In control schedule, we could get schedule forecasts. Let's go on to the fun piece, the piece that is the elephant in the room. Everyone wants a party, but no one wants to count the cost, because the cost could be crazy with all the additions we've decided to put in. So the very first thing you're probably noticing that we plan cost management. We plan how are we going to manage the cost. Then number 2, we calculate the cost of food, the cost of decorations, and emergency things. Number 3, determine the budget. We set a budget that includes a contingency fund for unexpected karaoke machine rentals, and also the budget itself. When you have the budget with the contingency, we talk about monitoring and checking that all through, which takes us into control cost. It's very important that you realize there's a difference between a contingency reserve and a management reserve. The management reserve needs permission. That's what we take and eventually add to the budget, and then it's revised. So we have revisions of budgets. We have our cost baseline, but it gets revised. And when those management reserves become part of the budget in little increments, they are now approved and the baseline changes. We call it a rebaselining. But I won't bore you with all the details. But in controlling costs, we want to make sure Uncle Bob doesn't go off and splurge on those annoying fireworks. So let's talk about cost and what exactly happens. Number 1, you got to plan how to manage it. Number 2, you got to estimate the cost. Number 3, you got to determine the budget. And number 4, you got to control it. Just make sure no one's doing any extras. And if they are and you get a wind of it, make sure you know what changed, rectify stuff as makes sense. All right. So we got a cost management plan. We got cost estimates, BOEs. We got the cost baseline as an output from determined budget. We also know when funding is required. And then we have cost forecasts. And that takes us to a fun and rather subjective area, which is quality management. I often say quality is 3 things. It's fitness for use, it's conformance to requirements, it's customer satisfaction, and it's Kaizen. And what is Kaizen? Kaizen just means continuous improvement, change for the better. So in all that we're doing in this family reunion, we want to make sure that we're just getting better and better. So number 1, first thing you do is you set quality standards like perfectly cooked burgers, None of those crazy burgers from our last time, right? No soggy salads. Now, set the quality standards. Number two, you got to manage quality. You got to monitor the food and the fun, ensuring everything meets grandma's high expectations. So we're checking the process, right? There's a difference between manage quality and control quality. Manage quality is checking the process, checking the food process, checking the fun process, the way the game's unfolding, the way the interaction is going, right? It's not checking a final product, but it's checking the process, right? So manage quality is all process related. And then control quality, we're going to inspect the food and the activities, adjusting as needed to maintain the high standards. So quality is pretty easy in this family reunion project. There's pretty much just three things, and it's plan, manage, and monitor. So plan, manage, and control, I beg your pardon. Let's jump into it really quickly. So plan quality management, that's developing a plan for how to manage project quality, manage quality, executing the quality management plan to comply with standards. And what we're saying is you're doing quality audits, checking the process. Number three is control quality, and that's checking the product. So there's a difference between two and three. From one, we get our quality management plan and any metrics we're going to be checking. Number two, we get test and evaluation documents that we use to document our testing in the third process, which is control quality. And this is where we have verified deliverables, which just means a stamp of approval on the end deliverable before it goes to the client. All right. Moving on, my friends, let's get into some resource management. So what exactly is a resource? A resource refers to human, equipment, material, supplies, or facility resources that could be used on the project. So the very first thing that we do is we plan resource management. We take a look at how we're going to effectively manage the resources, and then we could also be involved in writing a team charter or social contract or team contract, all the same thing, but in the team contract or social contract or team agreement, we have ground rules, do's and don'ts, expected behavior, no fighting, no coming to blows, no acting like crazy family members. So the very first thing is putting that plan together. Number two, we estimate activity resources. We determine the number of hands needed on deck to set up the tents, manage the kid games, manage the crazy dog, the pit bull, the family dog. And then we got acquire resources, which is gathering everything and everyone, ensuring Uncle Joe gets his special grilling tongs. And then we get into develop team, where we boost morale with a pre-union pep talk and promising of extra dessert. And then we get into manage team, which is keeping everyone motivated, keeping everyone pumped, the rah-rah, keeping them focused, especially during the hot dog eating contest. And then we get into control resources. Now, this is not about the people. Control resources is all about the physical resources, okay? And those are the six things that happened. You know, I like breaking it down, making it short, sweet, and simple. So here's the long form, right? And you can always stop the video and go back. But if you're getting value out of this, why don't you smash that like button for me and help other people find this fun episode? So we plan resource management. How are we going to manage our resources? How are we going to develop them? And then we also from here could have a team charter. Estimate activity resources, estimating how many, how much, acquire resources, acquiring the resources, develop team, training and team building, manage team is feedback and the pumping up, you know, keeping them pumped. And then control resources is all about the physical, right? So again, from the first one, we get our resource management plan and our team charter that set the tone. From estimate activity resources, we get our resource estimates. From acquire resources, we get our team assignments. We know who's on the team and what they're doing. From develop team performance assessments. From manage team, we could update our resource profile so people who have been for training are given the right level of recognition and the databases are updated with that. And then control resources. We could have work performance information that eventually makes its way into a report of how well this entire thing is going. All right. Moving on, my friends, we get into project communications management. And project communications management, it just has three aspects. And we're going to talk about those three aspects. But for now, I got to tell you the fun story about these three aspects. So when it comes to communications management, the very first thing we did is we created a plan for how we'll communicate. We decided upon communication methods like a family group chat for quick updates, using Messenger, using WhatsApp, whatever we decide to use for communication, we decide on the frequency of meetings. And then we keep everyone informed. That takes us to manage communications. This is where you're actually communicating. And in so doing, you got to remember we have sender receiver models. So when you're sending a message, you are encoding it. And when they receive it, they're decoding it and they're sending a message back. All of that stuff is what we talk about here. Keeping everyone informed about the schedule, any changes like moving the picnic indoors due to rain and things like that. And you got to remember that the project manager spends 70 to 90% of the time communicating. So on every project, expect to do a whole lot of communications. We call that managed communications. And finally, we have monitor communications, which is ensuring everyone gets the message, especially the one about no politics at dinner, no crazy red and blue debates. keep that for a different day, a different time, not in the family reunion. My goodness. I know some of you are saying good luck with that in my family. Let's jump into communications management. Okay, so the very first thing, we plan communications management. We develop a communications management plan to guide communications on the project. Then we manage communications, doing, right? The actual communicating. Number three is monitoring the communications, making sure it's going according to plan. We get the communications management plan from the first one, project communications, things we might archive and document, any memos that were exchanged, and then monitor communications is again work performance information used to understand how well is this knowledge area going. You've done very well. Just got three more. On to risk management. Now, when you think about a risk, a lot of people think risk means negative. No, it doesn't mean negative. In our book, we're very quick to tell you that risk management could be positive or negative, right? When it comes to risk management, and you might want to look for this book, it's called PMP Exam Immersion. I believe you can get it at immersion.hpmexam.com or just go to the Praizion site, you'll find it. But this book makes it very simple. You know, I wrote it with my buddy Roy, and we break it down very simply. And what we say about risk management is it could be positive or negative. What is a risk? It's an uncertain event that could impact the project positively or negatively. Therefore, we have positive risks, which we call opportunities. We have negative risks or threats. Pick your choice. Which one do you want to manage? Someone said, I just want to manage the positive. No, that's the wrong answer. You got to manage both. You got to manage the positive and the negative. When we talk about negative risks, I talk about the A team mnemonic, ATEAM. You remember Mr. T and the A team? Well, the A team is a way that you can remember the mnemonic. It stands for avoid, transfer, escalate, accept, mitigate. It's such a cool mnemonic, A team, but it helps you remember the 5 approaches to negative risks. Someone said, what about the positive risks? Well, the positive risks is easy. It's a play on words, EASEE. So E could stand for exploit, A could stand for accept, S could stand for share, and the last 2 E stand for escalate and enhance. And those are ways you deal with positive risk. So I've just given you 2 really cool mnemonics. But before we go any further talking about mnemonics and talking about this crazy project, why don't we go a little bit into the 7, because there's 7 approaches or 7 processes to risk management in the PMI's dogma. The first thing you want to do is plan how to manage risk. So we call that plan risk management. Number 2, we call it identify risks. Identify risk is where we identify potential risks like rain or Uncle Bob's firework fascination, burnt barbecue, canceled event due to weather, things like that. Then we get into performing qualitative risk analysis. And this is where we assess risks based on likelihood and impact. We put it on a scale, for example, a 1 to 5 for probability, or likelihood, a 1 to 5 in terms of impact. And let's say we have a 3 and a 5, we multiply them. And we do that for all the risks. And eventually, we're going to prioritize the risk based on the score. When you multiply likelihood by impact, we get a risk score. So we want to take that, and then we want to prioritize risks that need immediate attention, those that we could put on the back burner, on a watch list, and things like that. But for those that are kind of critical, we go into our next process, perform quantitative risk analysis. And this is where we're quantifying, what's the word? Quantifying the impact of high priority risks. So you want to take a look at the probability percent and the impact using a quantitative measure like currency, like dollars, euro, yen, naira, whatever the currency is. And then we're going to end up getting probability times impact to give EMV, expected monetary value. And that just tells you the magnitude. And then when we've done that, there's a summation that takes place to find, as it were, the full total EMV, expected monetary value. And that's what we do in quantitative. Now it's beginning to sound a little bit technical, but don't let it scare you. The exam actually doesn't have a whole lot of that stuff. So qualitative and quantitative, you got to understand one is more like on a scale, and the other is more like definitive, like in dollars or in hours, resource hours, and things like that. But moving on to number 5, we have plan risk responses. And like I said, you can have negative risks, positive risks, but you have responses for those, A, team, and easy. So we develop strategies to mitigate risks or to deal with the risk somehow. You don't always have to mitigate. You know, whenever you talk about risk, people say, we're going to mitigate it. No, mitigate is just one. It's one out of the A team. You have A, T, E, A, M. You got 5 things you could do. You could avoid, transfer, escalate, accept, or mitigate. And it's deliberately the last in my list because I don't want you to think everything is mitigate. No, everything can't be mitigate. You can avoid. You could choose to not do anything about it. So always keep that in mind. All right. So we're developing strategies to deal with the risk, like having a backup indoor venue or something else, you know, or having canopies if it suddenly is about to rain. Number 6 is where we implement the risk responses. We put the plans into action and we ensure smooth execution. Monitor risk is keeping an eye on the risks and adjusting plans as needed. So watch carefully because this is a loaded one. And like I said, if you want more, look for the book. It's called PMP Exam Immersion. It immerses you deep into the content, but it does it in a really fun way based on the PMI ECO, the exam content outline. So you might want to look for that book. Going down to praizion.com, you can find an e-version and download it right away. And the cool thing is you can actually have Microsoft Edge read the PDF book to you. So just an absolute time saver. All right. So are you ready to jump into a deeper dive of risk? Now, as you see, we're getting towards the end. It's beginning to get a little bit more voluminous. All right. So let's talk about risk. Number 1, you plan how to manage risk. Number 2, you identify the risk. Number 3, you do a qualitative risk analysis. Number 4, a quantitative risk analysis. Number 5, you plan how to respond to the risk using A-team or easy. Number 6, you implement risk responses. And number 7, you monitor risk. The cool thing is from the very first 2, that's where all your outputs are. Everything else is just gravy. Plan risk management gives you a risk management plan. Identify risk gives you a risk register and a risk report, and everything else is just updates. And then WPI as usual, which is information about the risks that goes into a final or a siloed report for the time period, which we do in monitor and control project work. We put all these things together. We could break our report down into silos showing scope, schedule, cost, quality, performance, risk performance, and so on and so forth. That's really it for risk. This is one area, newsflash, you might have to rewind and you might have to look at it a few more times. Quite beefy. All right, moving on to project procurement management. Procurement management is where we decide, do we need to buy something for this project or are we going to make it all on our own? Okay, so as you can imagine, a family reunion project would have lots of drama. Deciding what to buy, what to rent, like the tents, the extra chairs, and things like that. So very first process, as usual, plan procurement management. Decide whether you're going to buy or whether you're going to make. Of course, it's going to be a whole lot of buying. So it's deciding what to buy or rent, like the tent, the extra chairs. When you've decided what to buy in planned procurement management, you also could put together a request for proposal or request for bid or request for information to begin to source for vendors who can provide these services for you or these items. Then we get into conduct procurements where you're purchasing. This is where you're actually buying, you're purchasing or renting items and ensuring that you get the best deal for the karaoke machine. And you're ensuring that you're negotiating in good taste and honesty. And then you find vendors or sellers you want to use, you award the contract, expectations are set. And then we get into control procurements where they got to deliver. So we're monitoring deliveries, monitoring quality, ensuring everything arrives on time and in good condition. All right. And that's it for procurement. It's very concise. In the procurement chapter, you have contract types. There are 3 contract types. There's a fixed price, there's a cost reimbursable, and there's a time and material. Under fixed price contracts, you got to remember we have 3. We have firm fixed price, we have fixed price incentive fee, and we have fixed price with economic price adjustment. So if it were a project that would go on for years, you want to have an FP-EPA with a clause for adjustment, fluctuation, of interest rates, fluctuation of currency, conversion rates, and so on. And then we have cost reimbursable. We have cost plus incentive fee, we have cost plus fixed fee, and we have cost plus award fee. And last but not least, we have time and material. So these are some terminologies that could come up in this area of procurement management. Okay, let's do a very quick review and then we'll just have one left. That's simple. Plan procurement management, planning what you need to buy, what you're going to make on your own, and then write in the RFPs, RFQs, RFIs, IFNs, and all that. And then we get into conduct procurements, the process of obtaining seller responses, selecting a seller, and awarding a contract. And then we get into control procurement, the process of managing the procurement relationship. So again, you got to think about what is going on here. We first plan, do we need to procure anything? If the answer is yes, we have a procurement management plan, a statement of work for the procurement, a procurement strategy for payments, bid documents are created like the RFPs, the RFIs, so on. Then we have sometimes independent cost estimates to ensure no one's tricking us or ensure that they really understand what they are bidding on. And then make or buy decisions, making sure that we've had those very concise conversations. What are we making ourselves? What are we buying? And then just go through the entire project, make sure nothing is missing. And then selection criteria for choosing a vendor or seller. In the next process, we award a contract, so we have agreements and selected sellers. And then in control procurements, this is where we close out a procurement when the work is properly done. We have work performance information, which is just information on how well the procurement is proceeding, which goes into reporting. Final knowledge area here, my friends, is project stakeholder management. And project stakeholder management is very easy to understand because don't we all have stakeholders? Even beyond the project level, don't we all have stakeholders? In our book, again, I got to make it clear that we talk about this area. We talk about stakeholders all through. But the really cool thing about it is we're not just talking about stakeholders from a predictive perspective. We're talking about stakeholders from a 360 perspective in the world of Agile, in the world of hybrid, in the world of predictive. So it's very robust. My buddy Roy does a great job in talking about stakeholders because, when you're in the world of Scrum, you have the business. The business, those are your stakeholders. Who is the representative of the stakeholders? It's your product owner. So that whole dynamic of business, the development team, the Scrum Master, we talk about it in that book. And then we have another book. If you really want to go crazy in Agile, like really go deep, we have the Agile Principle Run and Cut book, where we not only talk about stakeholders, we talk about all the drama that could ensue in Agile. And we do it very well. We break it down for you so that you understand the world of Scrum, the world of Kanban, and the principles, the practices, the values, all that you need to know about Agile. It's called Agile Principle Raw and Uncut, okay? So for those of you who are looking for an out, you're in prison, you're in jail because you're studying for the PMP, but you ain't enjoying it. You need to be in my program, okay? You can go to hpmexam.com. If you go to hpmexam.com, You'll be able to see when my next training is. I have them quite frequently all throughout the year. And this will get you in the fast lane for your PMP so that you're actually using time that you could spend studying for something productive. We also have study groups that are put together where we have people of like minds inspiring each other. All right. As my stakeholders, I had to let you know about that. All right. So let's talk about the stakeholder chapter. So in stakeholder management, we first of all, one, identify stakeholders. We got to identify all the stakeholders from grandma, family, pets, identify them all. Number two, plan stakeholder engagement is where we are planning how to keep everyone involved and happy, like ensuring grandma gets a special seat. Then we get into managed stakeholder engagement. This is keeping everyone engaged, even during Uncle John's long-winded stories. My goodness, that guy can put you to sleep. And lastly, we have monitor stakeholder engagement, ensuring everyone remains satisfied and any concerns are promptly addressed. Why don't we jump into our last summary? This is going to go very quick because everyone has got stakeholders. Even kids have got stakeholders. People that are interested in the projects they're working on. Hey, education is a project. Oh my goodness. Finding a job is a project. Let's go. Identify the stakeholders. Plan how to keep them engaged. Manage their engagement. Communicate with them. Get them psyched and worked up in a good way. And then monitor the engagement. Make sure they're engaged. And if not, understand why and make tweaks if they're not engaged. So we have the stakeholder register. We have the stakeholder engagement plan as an output. And boom, you just got done. I didn't even know when we got done. I was about go into the next chapter, but we just got done. We did all of the 10 knowledge areas. My goodness, we deserve a medal for it. You deserve a medal for staying with me this far. So why don't we go over it very quickly? Let's tackle all that we've said in a different way. I have a mnemonic for you. Okay, I'm going to bring this up on a whiteboard. I think you'll be pleasantly surprised to know that they're mnemonics for the 10 areas of knowledge. So the mnemonic goes like this. I saw 6 chipmunks. Quietly roasting coffee. Reading poetry stories. Isn't that outrageous? Reading poetry stories. And this just stands for integration, scope. Let me put them on top here so that I don't want you to forget it. Integration, that's the I. Scope, schedule, cost, and I know I can probably make them bigger. Let's see if I can make them bigger for you. There we go. Integration, scope, schedule, cost, quality. Coming down here. We're going to change the color now so that you keep your eye on the ball. Resource for that one. Communications. And then this one is risk. Finally, we do risk. And then the last two, let's use another color configuration so you keep your eye on the ball. Procurement And last but not least, stakeholder. Boom. We just had a blast going over all of them. We took no prisoners. We went over all the 10 knowledge areas with my ridiculous family reunion story. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did enjoy it, smash the like button, give your buddy Phil some love. And if you have any questions whatsoever about any of this, you need to put a comment below so that I can get back to you with answers. Okay. Again, check out these books on our website. This book, the PMP Exam Immersion, you probably want the e-version because we have a workbook that goes with it with 100 of those realistic PMP, what should the PM do next kind of questions. And that one, Agile Principle Run and Cut, is a really great book to help those who have not really been down an Agile path to get a great understanding of Agile. Okay, there you have it, the Family Reunion Project. Thank you for joining me. I know I have this story in one of my books somewhere. I have so many books, I can't remember which one this is in. It's probably one of my PMP books that is not on sale on Amazon. I think it's somewhere on the web, but I can't remember where. Anyway, enjoy the story. I know it's in our podcast. If you go to pmradio.org and you go to the study.pmradio.org, you're bound to find this tale in a different way. Take care. All the best on your PMP or your CAPM exam.